Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. You know I run her in bed, right? His voice cut through the music and every conversation froze for me. My name is Ava, 26, and I remember that line perfectly. I felt my fingers tighten around my cup as everyone turned toward us. Half the room laughed before they even understood what he had just said. I tried to smile, tried to look like I was in on the joke. You know that fake laugh you do when your boss says something gross? That was the one that came out of my mouth right then. Inside, something dropped hard and fast, like a misstep on stairs. I already knew this moment was going to replay in my head later. He leaned back on the couch, relaxed like this was normal party talk. Like she does whatever I say in the bedroom, he went on. He tapped his chest, proud and loose, like this was some award. Across from us, one of my friends choked on her drink and coughed. She looked at me first, not him, and that look burned. Dude, too much information, someone laughed from the other chair. They were still grinning though, waiting for more, not less. He saw that and his eyes lit up like he had an audience. Come on, they want to know why she keeps coming back, he added. My face felt hot and my legs went rigid under his hand. He slid his palm onto my thigh like he was proving ownership. She likes it when I take charge, don't you, babe? He asked. Everyone stared at me, not in a kind way, just hungry for reaction. I could hear my pulse in my ears while I forced a shrug. If it keeps him from talking more, sure, I joked, voice thin. They laughed again, louder this time, like I had confirmed everything. One girl I barely knew gave me this quick apologetic smile and looked away. Another friend nudged the guy next to her and raised her eyebrows. It felt like my private life had been thrown on a table and opened. I stayed sitting there because standing up felt like starting a fight. Tell them how you beg when you're close, he pushed on. He grinned wide now, fully committed, enjoying every second of this. I heard somebody go yo under their breath like this was a show. My jaw locked so tight I thought a tooth might crack. I laughed again instead, a sharp, ugly sound that did not feel mine. In my head, I tried to bargain with myself in real time. It's only words, I told myself, he is just drunk and stupid. Everyone jokes about sex here, I told myself, this is normal banter. I knew I was lying to myself even while I thought it. Later, that lie would be the part that hurt the most. Relax, she loves it when I tell her what to do, he bragged. He squeezed my leg again a little harder, like a period on the sentence. Someone shouted from the kitchen, asking for more drinks, breaking the spell. I grabbed that chance like air and stood up fast, almost tripping. I'll get them, I muttered, already moving, desperate for distance. In the kitchen, the noise from the living room felt muffled and far. I set my cup down and gripped the counter with both hands. My heart was still racing, yet my brain was already rewriting the scene. You are overreacting, I told myself, everyone is fine and laughing. I stared at my reflection in the dark window and barely recognized that smile. A friend stepped in behind me, reaching for more ice. You good? She asked, casual tone, eyes not casual at all. I swallowed and shrugged, the move automatic, my shoulders too tight. He's just being an idiot, I said, which was also what I needed to believe. She hesitated for a second, then nodded slowly and walked back out. I stayed a moment longer, listening to the voices rise and fall again. His laugh stood out, loud and confident, like nothing was wrong anywhere. I knew if I hid in the kitchen too long he would notice. That would mean more attention, more jokes, more hands where I hated them. So I picked up the drinks and walked back in like nothing happened. He saw me and hooked an arm around my waist, pulling me close. There she is, my girl, he announced, as if returning property to display. His breath brushed my ear when he added, they love hearing about you. My stomach flipped, not in the romantic way, more like a warning alarm. I smiled on cue because I did not know another move yet. They kept talking about other things, work and gossip and random stories. Still, every time someone glanced at me, I felt that earlier line echo. I could see curiosity in a couple of faces every time he joked now. Like they were replaying what he had said and filling in details. I shifted in my seat and wished I could peel my own skin off. At one point he slapped my hip lightly as I stood to grab water. Don't be shy, they already know you're freaky, he joked toward the group. A few laughs followed, tired now, but nobody pushed back for real. No one said, hey man, that is out of line, knock it off. The silence after the laughter felt heavier than the joke itself. I remember catching my own ye in a hallway mirror on the way back. My expression was bright and easy, the kind people call chill. Inside, I was running through exit plans I would not use that night. Back then, I told myself this was only one weird moment to forget. I had no idea it was actually the first crack in the door. The front door clicked shut and he laughed behind me. You were so stiff back there, like someone dragged their grandma. He dropped his keys on the counter with this loose little flick. I kept my shoes on and my jaw tight because I needed that armor. If I relaxed too soon, I knew I would fold. I didn't like what you said. I blurted it out fast before courage melted and vanished. My palms were damp and my throat felt rough from holding back. He paused, then smirked like I had just told a childish joke. That's it, that's what you're mad about. I nodded once and stared at a spot near his shoulder. If you talk about us like that again, I'm leaving. The words came out stronger than I felt inside. For a second he just blinked, taken off guard by the threat. Then his face shifted into that familiar, amused disbelief. Babe, it was funny. He stepped closer and lifted my chin with 2 fingers. Everyone was laughing, nobody thinks you're some kind of toy. He chuckled, like the idea of it being serious entertained him. I pulled my head back and his hand dropped, heavier than before. I felt exposed, not entertained. My voice cracked on that last word and I hated it. They were staring at me like I was a performance, not a person. I knew I was mixing old anger with fresh shame right there. It still felt better than swallowing it completely and pretending nothing happened. He leaned against the counter and crossed his arms slowly. So I make you sound amazing in bed and that's bad now. His eyebrows climbed and that little crooked smile appeared again. You looked hot the whole time, trust me, nobody pitied you. He made it sound like a compliment, but my skin crawled. I shook my head and tried again with smaller words. I didn't like it, that should be enough. Saying that out loud felt huge, larger than the kitchen itself. He exhaled hard through his nose and rolled his eyes upward. There it is, drama mode. He pushed off the counter and walked toward me. Guys talk, that's what we do when we hang out. His hands found my waist like they had a built-in map. You want me to sit there like a monk and talk about taxes? He laughed against my temple and waited for me to join in. I stayed rigid while his grip tugged me closer. You can talk about whatever you want without using my body. The sentence stumbled out, but at least it existed now. He pulled back just enough to look at my face again. You didn't say anything there, you laughed, you were fine. That part hit harder than I expected. Because he was right, I had laughed to keep the peace. I had even thrown in a weak joke to move things along. Now he held that moment up like proof that I approved. Shame spread through my chest faster than the anger had. I laughed because I froze. My words were quiet, but they still cut the air. I didn't know how to react in front of everyone. He shrugged like that was my personal glitch, not his problem. So that's on you, not me. He turned away and grabbed his phone from the counter. You really trying to make me the villain over some teasing? His thumb moved across the screen, attention half on me. People joke about their relationships all the time, relax. That word landed like a slap, worse than anything he said earlier. Relax. That one word made something inside me twist hard. Whenever someone tells you to calm down, you usually amp up. I crossed my arms over my chest to keep myself steady. If you cared, you would say sorry instead of telling me to chill. He looked up from the screen with an exaggerated sigh. Fine, I'm sorry you got upset. He spread his hands like he had just handed me a gift. That better, can we move on and actually enjoy our night? The apology felt hollow, yet part of me grabbed it anyway. I recognized that version of myself now, watching from later. Back then, I treated any crumb of regret like a feast. Do you actually think you did nothing wrong? The question slipped out before I could filter it. He stiffened for the first time since we entered the apartment. I think you're making a small thing huge. He reached for me again, softer this time, almost careful. I'm not some monster, I talk about you because I'm proud. His fingertips traced circles on my hip, gentle and persistent. If I thought you were boring, I wouldn't mention you at all. He weaponized flattery like that often, though I only see it now. In that moment it sounded twisted, but also strangely comforting. My brain tried to merge the hurt with the sweet spin. Maybe I am taking it too seriously, maybe I am sensitive. Those thoughts crept in while his hands kept moving. He kissed my cheek, then my jaw, then that spot on my neck. I wanted them to know how lucky I am, that's all. His voice dropped lower, softer, like intimacy could erase everything. Come on, you know you love when I take the lead. My body tensed again, this time from a different kind of dread. I don't want to do anything tonight. I stepped back and broke his hold completely. I'm exhausted and I'm still upset. My chest was hammering, but my feet stayed in place for once. His mouth pressed into a flat line I knew too well. Well, he ran a hand through his hair and let out a short laugh. So I hype you up, you sulk, and now you deny me. The room felt smaller as he stared at me in disbelief. Do you get how that feels, or is it just you in this? There it was, the shift I would see again and again later. Somehow the conversation turned from my boundary to his disappointment. Guilt crawled up my throat, stronger than my earlier anger. I'm not trying to punish you, I just feel weird. Even as I spoke, I could hear myself backing down. He stepped forward again, closing the gap by half. I don't want to fight over dumb stuff every weekend. His voice dropped, quieter now, like he was tired of me. If this is how you're going to act, maybe we both rethink things. That line hit a totally different nerve, the one wired to fear. I imagined him walking out, imagined everyone hearing some twisted version. The thought of being the difficult girlfriend swallowed my outrage fast. Can we just go to sleep and talk tomorrow? My voice sounded small, almost like I wanted permission. He studied me for a long moment that felt like a test. Yeah, whatever, I'm over it. He brushed past me toward the bedroom, shoulders tense. Next time, try not to embarrass me in front of everybody. That sentence snapped at my heels as I followed in silence. It stayed louder than his earlier bragging once the lights went off. I lay on my side, fully awake, while he scrolled beside me. Every so often his arm brushed mine and my body flinched. I almost opened my mouth 3 times to restart the argument. Each time I pictured him saying the word dramatic again, harsher. So I stayed quiet and let his version of the night solidify. Looking back, that was the real turning point, not the party. He learned he could twist the narrative and keep me close. I learned that I would trade my own comfort to avoid losing him. I did not leave that night. I rolled onto my back and stared up. I had no idea how many more nights would follow the same script. His hand clamped on my hip in the grocery aisle. I flinched and he tightened his grip like I might bolt. 2 strangers glanced over, then looked away like we were background noise. He leaned close and murmured mine into my ear, satisfied. I peeled his fingers off me and stepped sideways out of reach. Stop grabbing me like that in public, it feels weird as hell. He chuckled and swung the cart forward like nothing happened at all. You overthink everything, he tossed over his shoulder like a warning. I am not overthinking, my voice came out low and sharp. You announced that I am yours like a logo or property. He turned, leaned on the cart, and studied my face like a puzzle. Calm down, I am just marking my girl and you should enjoy that. That word marking hit me harder than anything else in that moment. It made me feel less like a partner, more like livestock. I opened my mouth again, then caught the bored couple behind him listening. I shut it and watched him walk ahead, still holding my basket. A few days later, he had friends over for a game night. I hovered near the doorway, half host, half bouncer for my own body. They joked loud about work and traffic, then somehow drifted to sex. He grinned and threw my name into the conversation like bait on water. Now my girl is obedient, he bragged while tapping his chest. If I tell her I want something, she delivers, no hesitation at all. One of his buddies whistled and my skin crawled like ants had landed. I set down the snacks harder than necessary and every head turned my way. Wow, great to know I am so service-oriented like a robot. He looked over his shoulder and smirked like I had proved his point. See, she even jokes about it and that proves my point. One friend met my eyes for a second, then dropped his stare to the floor. I escaped to the kitchen and pretended to fuss with cans in a cabinet. My hands shook while I lined things up that nobody would notice anyway. Laughter rolled in from the other room, mixed with some crude comment I missed. I told myself again that guys exaggerate their lives, but my face burned hot. Later, while picking up empty bottles, his phone buzzed on the table. A preview popped up from a chat labeled locker room with a bunch of emojis. I did not read the line, I just saw my name in the bubble. He walked in right then and flipped the screen face down. Faster than usual. Who are you talking to right now? My voice tried for casual and landed shaky. Just the guys from work, nothing you would care about. He reached for my waist again and my body stepped back on its own. His smile thinned for a breath, then snapped back wide like nothing changed. That night in bed, he rolled toward me like we had no unfinished business. I lay stiff on my side and watched the clock glow on the dresser. He murmured, "Come here," and slid an arm around my middle like a belt. I swallowed and whispered that I was drained from the day, not in the mood. He exhaled hard and pressed closer, his breath warm on the back of my neck. "You keep saying that lately," he muttered as his fingers traced under the edge of my shirt. I froze and tried to peel his hand away gently so we would not fight. He caught my wrist and held it there, not rough but unyielding pressure that trapped me. His voice dropped as he murmured that he needed this, like that excused everything that followed. I let go of my resistance and went along, staring at the blank wall. My body moved but my mind floated somewhere above, counting uneven breaths in the dark. Afterward he fell asleep quickly, while I lay there soaked in a quiet disgust. I told myself it was easier to give in sometimes, that it kept the peace. Lying there though, I realized I had not actually agreed to anything that happened. He took my silence and my stiffness as yes again, just like that night with friends. That pattern lodged in my chest like something heavy and sharp, too clear to ignore anymore. The next morning he texted me a winking selfie while I sat at my desk. He messaged that last night was crazy, then added a fire emoji and something crude. My stomach flipped reading it, not with excitement but like my body knew the truth. I responded with a neutral heart and closed my phone, afraid to read anything else. Over the next week, I watched him turn our private moments into small performance pieces. Little comments dropped in group chats and jokes tossed to coworkers, all featuring me as the punchline. Anytime I flinched, he brushed it off as me being sensitive or moody again. The more he joked, the less I recognized myself, like he had rewritten my role. I used to think disrespect would show up like screaming or obvious cruelty. Instead, it crept in through casual comments, hands that would not move when I froze. By the time I understood that, he had an entire audience trained to see me his way. I did not know it yet, but those small moments were already pushing me toward the door. My phone buzzed 3 times in a row on the table. I glanced over and saw my friend's name with a short message. "You awake? I need to show you something about him." My chest tightened before I even touched the screen. Messages that start like that rarely bring anything good. I opened our chat and a wall of screenshots filled the screen. Tiny profile icons, his username, my name sitting there in gray text. The group title at the top matched the one I had noticed before. There were a lot of laughing reactions and crude emojis under each line. I already felt sick before I tapped the first image. The first screenshot was from the night he pulled me close in bed. He had written in the guys' chat almost immediately after I fell silent. "Had her whining for it again, she acts shy but loves when I take control." Underneath that, one buddy responded with a row of flames and a trophy. My thumb shook on the glass while I zoomed in on the words. He kept going in the next screenshot like he was on stage. "She gives me that little speech about boundaries, then melts as soon as I push." That was the exact night I had asked him to stop touching me. In the chat, it looked like some playful act between 2 people. Nobody there knew I had gone still and stared at the wall. The third screenshot hit harder than the first 2 together. He wrote, "She says no all soft, but it really means keep going." Another friend replied, "You got her trained, man, that is how it should be." Someone dropped a clip of a woman rolling her eyes and biting her lip. My whole body went cold reading strangers celebrate him ignoring my words. I scrolled further, hunting for the end, hoping it would slow down. Instead, I found a ranking message I never imagined existed. He listed his ex and me like items, scored out of 10 for performance. Her name, then mine, with little stars next to who did what better. The last line read, "Current girl wins, more work but more payoff." My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I realized I was holding my breath between each new screenshot. He had compared specific things I had done while he watched his friends react. That night for me had been confusing and heavy and full of doubt. For him, it turned into bullet points and jokes on a timeline. I reached the final screenshot my friend sent with a short caption. At the top he had written, About the house gathering from before. Told the boys how I flexed in front of my friends and loved it. He dropped a line about how I play innocent then swallow anything I am given. Below that my friend had typed, I thought you should see this for yourself. My vision blurred for a second and I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. I was half expecting to find some line where he defended me. Something like chill guys, she is a person not a story. There was nothing like that, just more emojis and cheap punchlines. Every message made the night at the party feel worse. I typed, how long has that group looked like this? 3 dots appeared and disappeared like she kept starting then deleting. Finally her response came in pieces like she was giving me doses. A while I didn't want to get involved, but that last part scared me. She added, you looked off lately and I felt wrong keeping quiet. I called her because I could not handle only text at that point. My voice came out hoarse when she picked up on the first ring. Did you read all of it? She asked. You stopped texting suddenly. I told her I had read enough to feel like someone had kicked me. She apologized and said she should have told me sooner. She just froze. Why now? I asked. What changed for you today? She admitted she had scrolled through while bored and saw the new messages. He wrote that I talk about consent like a podcast but still give it up. He joked that women like me want a man to ignore words and read bodies. She said that line made her stomach turn and that is why she sent everything. I thanked her even though the word tasted strange in my mouth. Without those screenshots, I would have kept thinking I misread everything. Hearing his version when I was not in the room rewired my brain. He was not confused, he was proud of overruling me and bragging about it. Once you see that, you cannot unsee it, not fully. While we were still on the phone, his text popped up over the call. Good morning baby with a heart and some inside joke from past weeks. The timing felt cruel, like the universe was poking me on purpose. I stared at the notification while my friend kept talking in my ear. I told her I would call back, then hung up and opened his message. Hey, he wrote, you were wild last night, I am still recovering. Then another line, I swear you pretend to resist but you love when I insist. It was almost word for word what he had typed in that group. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I forced a bland response. Busy morning, talk later, I sent, my stomach twisting as it delivered. He replied with a question mark and a sad face almost immediately. Then another message, did I do something? You're acting distant all of a sudden. I tossed the phone onto the couch because I could not answer yet. If I told him I had the screenshots, there would be no going back. If I ignored it, I stayed exactly where he wanted me. The hours until he came home dragged and sped up at the same time. I walked around the apartment, touching things I might want to pack one day. At one point I caught sight of myself in a mirror, pale and wired. I did not look like someone in a normal rough patch with her boyfriend. I looked like someone standing in the middle of a fire pretending it was fine. The lock turned in the door late afternoon and my shoulders locked. He came in talking about traffic and work like it was any other day. I stayed seated on the couch with my phone in my hand, screen dark. He dropped his stuff down and leaned over the back of the couch to kiss me. I tilted my face away just enough that his lips grazed my cheek instead. What's going on? He asked, pulling around to face me. His eyes narrowed, studying my posture like I was a new puzzle. You barely texted me today and now you are acting weird. I opened my phone, pulled up the first screenshot and turned the screen. You want to explain this? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. He stared at the image and his jaw clenched for the first time. Where did you get that? He asked, ignoring the actual content completely. I told him my friend forwarded it and that there were plenty more. He reached for the phone and I pulled it back out of reach quickly. So it is true, I said, not a joke someone faked, right? He scoffed and ran a hand over his face in one rough motion. So now my private chat with my friends is court evidence. He laughed once, sharp and humorless, like he did not believe this. Every guy vents in those spaces, he added, it is not that deep. That line made something inside me snap tighter, not looser. I scrolled to the part where he talked about my no-meaning yes. You wrote this, I said, tapping the screen, nobody forced you. You knew I was uncomfortable and you turned it into entertainment. He shook his head and took a step closer, palms open like I was unreasonable. You always liked it once things got going, that is all I meant. I felt my throat close. Around his version of our nights together. Because that line matched exactly what he had said in the chat. He was not even changing the story when faced with me. He actually believed that my freezing counted as enthusiasm. That realization scared me almost more than the messages themselves. I told him very clearly that I did not feel safe with him right then. The word safe hung between us heavier than anything else we had thrown. He blinked and scoffed again, then asked if I was seriously using that word. So now I am some predator because I talk big with my friends. He gestured broadly like I was accusing him of a crime on national television. I did not answer him directly, I described the nights he had pushed. I mentioned the episode where I had gone still and he continued anyway. I watched his expression shift from annoyance to a flicker of doubt back to anger. He told me I was rewriting history to make myself a victim in my own head. Hearing that while holding proof of his version almost made me laugh. He paced once across the room, then stopped and stared down at me. If you think I am some abusive jerk, why are you even here? His voice was loud now, but his eyes were more worried than furious. Do you want to keep this or not, because I am not begging? That last line landed like a dare instead of a question. I looked at him and finally saw the pattern instead of separate moments. The bragging at gatherings, the pressure in bed, the twisting of my reactions. The chat logs tied it all together in one ugly thread. He was not just careless, he was proud of controlling the narrative about us. Once you see someone clearly like that, you cannot pretend you don't. I told him I needed space, real space, not a short walk around the block. He cursed under his breath and grabbed his keys off the table in one swipe. Fine, he snapped, enjoy your little drama with your friends, I am out. The door slammed and the sound echoed through the apartment longer than it should. I sat there with the screenshots glowing in my hand, already planning my exit. I yanked the suitcase from under the bed and flipped it open. My hands were already shaking before I put anything inside. He had left 20 minutes earlier for work, keys jingling at the door. I knew his schedule well enough to count the safe hours. If I hesitated, I would still be here when he came back. I grabbed a stack of clothes and pushed them into one side. Not folded, just jammed in fast so my brain could not romanticize anything. Every time I paused, his words from the chat flashed behind my eyes. She melts as soon as I push, he had typed for laughs. I packed faster because I refused to prove that line right again. I took my documents from the drawer and slid them into my bag. License, passport, card holder, all the things that define a legal person. I checked twice without meaning to, terrified I would forget something crucial. If I left anything important, it would be an excuse to come back alone. I could not trust myself around him one more time in that space. The apartment felt weirdly quiet without his constant background noise. No music, no videos, just my breathing and the rustle of fabric. That silence made his comments from the group chat feel even louder. He had written full paragraphs about my reactions while I lay next to him. Once you know that, the walls feel contaminated with every memory. I walked into the bathroom and took only the essentials. Toothbrush, medication, one small bag of things I would actually use. Everything else stayed on the shelves like props from a life I outgrew. I forced myself not to tidy up out of habit this time. Leaving it imperfect felt like proof that I was done catering. When I stepped into the living room, my chest tightened again. Our photos on the shelf stared back with these fake frozen moments. I moved closer then stopped, hands hovering near the frames. If I started sorting those, I knew I would stall for hours. So I turned away and focused on the one thing that mattered. I took my keys from the hook and set them in the center. Metal against the counter sounded louder than it should in that quiet. For a second I pictured him finding them and laughing at the drama. Then I remembered the message where he bragged about ignoring my no. Any embarrassment I felt shrank next to that sentence. I pulled out my phone and opened a blank note. If I left without a word, he would rewrite the ending for everyone. If I overshared, he would mock every line in that chat again. So I typed slowly, choosing each word like it might be read aloud. I deserve basic respect and you refuse to give it, I wrote. I added one more line, short and final. Do not contact me, I am serious, this is over. Looking at those words felt unreal, like I was reading someone else. But my pulse slowed for the first time since the screenshots. I left the note under the keys where he could not miss. On the way to the door, my legs went strangely heavy. I touched the wall once where his shadow had passed 1,000 times. Memories tried to flood in, the good moments begging for one more chance. I knew if I replayed them, I would start bargaining with myself again. So I exhaled hard, turned the handle, and stepped out. The hallway air hit me like a different planet. Same building, same stairs, but my body registered everything as escape. I locked the door from the outside and slid the key through the slot. It clinked against the floor inside, final and small and huge. For a second I pressed my forehead to the door, then walked away. In the elevator, my phone buzzed with a new message from him. Round 2 tonight, ready for a better attitude, complete with a wink. He had no idea I was already leaving with my whole life. I stared at the text until the doors opened, then hit block. My thumb trembled, but the moment the option disappeared, I felt lighter. Outside, the air was colder than I expected, and it cleared my head. I ordered a ride to my friend's place across town with quick taps. Watching the little car icon move toward me felt bizarrely intense. Each minute waiting, I kept expecting his car to whip around the corner. I gripped the handle of my suitcase so hard my knuckles ached. When the driver pulled up, I forced my face into neutral. I tossed my bag in the back and slid into the seat. "You going far?" he asked lightly, eyes on the mirror for a second. "Across town," I said, then added, "New place, fresh start." He nodded once and turned the music up just enough to fill the silence. I watched the streets pass and tried not to count familiar landmarks. With each block, the apartment felt more distant but not unreal yet. My phone lit up again with a number I did not recognize. I let it ring out, then another call came from a different number. He was already testing every path back to me. A text came from an unknown contact a few minutes later. "Hey, it's me, answer your phone, this is Childish." I blocked that one too without responding, my jaw clenched tight. Then another message arrived from a mutual friend asking if we were fighting. He was clearly moving fast, trying to shape the story before I spoke. My friend opened the door before I even knocked. She pulled me into a hug so sudden I almost dropped my bag. "Tell me you are done for real," she whispered into my shoulder. I nodded and felt my throat close up again, this time from relief. Then my phone buzzed against my palm, demanding attention. I stepped back and held up the screen so she could see. He had written a long email now, since every number was blocked. Paragraph after paragraph about how I was overreacting and cruel. He ended with, "If you ruin my reputation over jokes, I swear." The threat was not direct, but it was enough to make my skin prickle. She took the phone from my hand and set it face down. "You are safe here tonight," she said. "He will not walk through this door." Part of me believed her, part of me still pictured him pounding on it. That split in my brain showed how deep his grip had sunk. I sank onto her couch and finally let myself shake. We sat there while I labeled every new number that tried to reach me. Unknown, possibly him, block, repeat over and over like a small ritual. Each time I hit block, I felt another thread snap between us. It was not instant freedom, more like cutting through a heavy net. I kept going because stopping halfway seemed worse than staying. Later that night, a final email came through with a different tone. He wrote that he loved me and that he would change everything. He insisted that the messages with his friends were just bluster. He promised that if I came back, he would never talk like that again. I stared at the screen and realized I did not believe a single sentence. I did not respond, which for me was the real break. In the past, I would have written long explanations to soften the blow. This time I closed the email app and powered the phone fully off. The quiet that followed felt strange, not peaceful yet, but honest. Without his voice in my pocket, my own thoughts finally had room. Sleeping that first night away from him was not easy at all. I woke up twice convinced I heard his key in the front door. Each time I lay there listening until my heartbeat slowed again. The thing that kept me from running back was simple and sharp. I knew if I returned, he would brag about that too. Looking back now, leaving early in the day saved me. If I had waited for a late-night fight, I might have stayed. Courage shows up in weird forms, like zipping a suitcase before coffee. Or writing 2 blunt lines on a note and walking out anyway. In the end, the only way to stop him from running my life was to run.